guide me, help me graduate. So seriously, to help edit down the aesthetic. So a lot to learn from this particular artist, academic, and mentor, and another fellow Leslie mentee of Isabel's is here.
Come on.
So she has an artist following of her own, certainly. And I'm very pleased to introduce you, and thank you for coming today.
Okay. Well, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience to be able to work with Cynthia, and now in the new space. So thank you again for this opportunity. So I just want to begin by just diving right into the work. I guess like a little bit about the process that I've kind of held on to for the last 20 years or so. So I've been working and exhibiting from the DC area since about 2000. And we took a 3-year hiatus to Berlin with our family. But other than that, my main base is in the DC area. So when I first started exhibiting at Addison Ripley, I was working with oils, but using photography as kind of a source to create my work. And at the time, the idea of the negative space was to evoke this apocalyptic light. And so I take the image from Photoshop and then kind of manipulate it, and then use that as kind of the foundation to make the paintings on canvas. So then it shifted. So from 2007, I started to incorporate more collage, more mark making, and more color. So it was very monochromatic at the time, and less of the individual like marks that you see here in these paintings. And the imagery at the time too was not so much focused on a person per se, but the landscape. So I was first initially driven and inspired by nature, and I still am, but at the time it was more like figure in landscape in that very traditional sense. But the way I was doing it was by really kind of eliminating a lot of the positive elements and bringing out this negative white light like you see right here. So what shifted, so people know me as someone that changes a lot as an artist, and I think I'm not, like, there's not one way to be, but that's the kind of artist that I am. I get a little bit restless when I stick to one kind of style. So for me, I've always been experimenting in my studio. So even after a show goes up, I'll start to already be like, how can I like deviate away from that particular style, or how can I respond to it in a way that's still connected? So my work has taken me from that kind of initial really bright negative space to working abstractly. So I did a lot of abstract work, which actually took me back to how I worked when I was in college. But all of those elements have come together in this work, as well as in my kind of my last body of work in 2022. But I started to incorporate, I was really interested in the bai-bai-yin. So I don't know if any of you are into linguists in the room. But Alex, my friend Johnson, she's a linguist professor at Georgetown. I was kind of shouting that out to you. But anyway, I was really interested in language, and my mom was a Tagalog professor at Madison for many years. And I started to research the pre-colonial alphabet of the Philippines, which is called the bai-bai-yin, which literally translates into alphabet. And so I used the alphabet to kind of like repetitively to create texture. But then I also kind of magnified it in some instances to make, you know, more of like a portrait of the script. So that kind of inclusion or that interest in those marks, and they're kind of squiggly. I wish I had an example for you, but the last show again had more of it. It kind of got me interested into just literally mark making. And I started to look more again into Chinese landscape painting, which the Chinese landscape process and what they value in terms of that long history of landscape painting, thousands of years, is the integrity of the mark. And so that's really what I've started to include and layer in this body of work as you can see in these 3 paintings, and that one as well. So this show is kind of a culmination of both the photographic element, and those of you who are photographers might be able to see that, in that I'm kind of pulling, again, like the positive that you can kind of like manipulate from Photoshop, and just kind of eliminating a lot of the elements that I don't want, and then filling in, so to speak, the areas where I want to have more, the eye kind of land on, by adding marks. And so, again, it was inspired by the use of the Baybayin, but now I've been looking at a lot of Aboriginal art, so I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with Aboriginal art, where they do a lot of the dot paintings. I absolutely love the visual effect of how that looks. And so, yeah, my works are kind of, they're texture, they're tapestry, but they're also about the people in my paintings. So I'm gonna merge to that real quick, and then I'm gonna open it up, I'll stop talking. And then you guys can ask questions. So, as I said earlier, at the beginning, my paintings always included my kids. So I have 2 daughters, and they're now in college. But even when they were little, I don't know, like somehow motherhood just became like this new role for me that I just like fell into, where I couldn't really, like a lot of mom artists are like, no, they can't be in my world. It's like, I'm a mom, that's my art, it's totally separate. But for me, it was more of this joy of like, oh, they're in my life, I want to include them in my work and actually like have them manifest in the paintings. So I kind of documented my children's growth. One was born in 2003 and 2005. Now they're both out of the house, but I think my journey as a mother kind of has also been through my painting. As I'm raising my kids, I'm also expressing them into the paintings, and they're very, I don't know, there's something really compelling about that relationship, the mother-daughter relationship. And so I have depicted both of them just more in like a somber and calm way, and not really trying to suggest any kind of like particular identity or characteristic with them. I just really wanted to capture them very like steadfast. And that's my mom over there. This is Bella and Sophia here. And then here, this is Sophia with her aunt and my sister Anna, which she's over there. And Anna also has been a subject in a lot of my work as a sister. So I guess what I'm merging into now is the content of what I'm trying to explore in terms of my relationship, not just as a mother, but as a sister, as a daughter, and it's something that I really compelled to paint when I see their faces, and that is where I'm at today. And so a lot of the paintings are, I make a lot of drawings, so you guys will see in the foyer here. So the drawings I make, I try to make one daily. And so those really help me kind of to just loosen up and prepare for the larger paintings. And I don't really do any works in between. So it's either really small or really big. I can't, it's weird because artists work in a particular scale and you feel comfortable in one way. Like I have an friend who cannot work any bigger than like a 5x7. And for me, it's like, there's no way I could have tiny little brushes. But for pencils, I am really into the idea of just drawing on the table, but then I have to see, for the paintings, I need to really move around in my studio and scale up. So this is, again, kind of a good sneak peek into how I work, which is small scale drawings and then large scale oil paintings. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I know that's a lot to put out there. If you have any questions, now it's a good time. Yes?
90 degrees.
Very good. Thank you. I forgot the title.
It's right up there.
Yes, 90 degrees. So I was actually thinking I forgot something. So 90 degrees. Okay. Well, so the 90 degrees has a lot of different connotations for me, and one could infer and interpret that on your own. But for me, it was more like the turn that I've had to make in my life in the last year and a half. And I was actually like assisted by my daughter, Sophia, with the title. And she's like, yeah, that seems to make sense because, you know, your life has kind of shifted a lot. But not 360, but just like in these right angles. So they are stark. And then also like with my mom having now living with us happily in our house, that was like another 90-degree turn. My dad, who passed away in 2020 during COVID, but not by COVID, but that was also another 90-degree turn. My two daughters, one right after the other, well, one like 2 years apart, going off to college. So I was dealing with that loss. So that for me, like, when I look at a clock, it's like the 90 degrees, it's a quarter, like that's like a lot of change. So that's one reason, change in life. But the other one is also just to think about like the temperature of our world and our like where we are today. Like culturally, politically, I just feel like everything's really at a high temperature. And I want to allude to that, but yet at the same time, my works don't really speak to that, what's happening politically. But I just do want to, like, you know, like have this as an archive that it is part of this milieu that we currently live in, where there's so much going on that's very like high and hot. And now it's like the average temperature, right, of which is really scary. So anyway, I hope that helps.
Yes.
You're welcome. Lucinda.
So I came late, so you may have touched on it, but can you describe your process a little bit with your
Sure.
painting? Like,
Yeah. Sharon, there's a chair right there. So these pieces, they're based on a lot of the drawings that I've made, and the drawings are based from photographs. So I use photography as a source, and these are photographs that I have taken of Sophia, and then Bella and Sophia, and my mom over there, and then I'll draw it out, and then I'll scale it up onto the bigger surface. And yeah, it's a little bit hard because I don't have a huge studio, and as you know, and so it's hard for me to kind of look back, to step away from it and to get a sense of where I want to place, like what color or marks. But it's something that's basically how they kind of get made. So from drawings to photography, drawing, a little bit of both, and then to the painting.
are you a fast painter or slow painter? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that I would say I'm generally fast because I consider myself more of a conceptual artist, really, and akin to Sol LeWitt, as you may or may not know, this very like a famous American conceptual artist whose work is more about the thinking, and the execution is actually pretty speedy. So I'm always thinking about what I want to do, and when I'm doing that, I'm taking notes and sketching. And then when I actually go into the studio and I already have a plan, I just like I do it and get it done. So that's really
So you work on one at a time, in the big ones?
yeah, usually one or two at a time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and but that's kind of like what people are calling, or have been calling, like the post studio, where you're kind of you know, when you're thinking about it, that is still work. Like whenever you're thinking about your work, you're still working, no matter what, you know, field you're in. So that's really kind of how my brain works. And then when I get into the studio, I guess I'm pretty efficient that way.
Do you start with a palette in mind, or is that also from the source of the photography?
It's not. It's actually, so that's where the painting that's where the fun part happens. So lately I've been working on palette. Like I feel like I should not just use my intuition to come up with my color. But I do, yeah, so I'm really into, as you can see, a lot of bright colors, saturated, complementary pairings. But it kind of just like grows as I make the painting. So I start out with like a neutral, like this one, I definitely wanted to see this particular blue, and for her hair. So that part of her hair, there's always usually one part of the painting that's like, oh, I really want to see this. And in this painting with Fia, this was this dress that I bought her, and I really love the checks, and then like this part right here, and I was like, I really want to pull that out. And so that dress, that was like, there's always one part that inspires me, and then that's actually the color of that dress. So I said, okay, this one's going to be more green, so it's going to be a cool painting. Yeah, and this one is generally started as cool with the lavenders and blues, but then I just kind of balanced it out with more warm tones around it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I am interested in like still the warm, cool dynamic.
No, I love your palettes, are great.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about, you said you, for a while, were working with the alphabet?
Oh yeah, the Baibayan.
Yeah, so, just so that I understand right, were you working with the shapes or your feeling of the sounds?
Uh-huh.
How you made it?
Right.
Could you
Well,
just
as
describe that?
visually, I was definitely more interested in it as for the shapes.
For the shapes, the actual characters of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wish I had a visual to show you.
So then that started part of your connection to pattern making besides that original.
Yeah, that was definitely part of it. Yeah, because when I would make these paintings, I would actually create these marks that were more filled in, and they weren't made with like a lot of dot. And Sharon, you've seen that from the very beginning,
Right.
like from when I first showed at MPA, and it's strictly painting.
Right.
When Bella was like 6 months old in my baby Bjorn. But that painting was kind of the beginning of like this work. But then I kind of took some detours and I'm back. But remember those paintings where they were like all like super saturated and monochromatic?
Yeah.
So then, yeah, the interest in mark making, when I was teaching, I would teach about Chinese landscape painting, using, and you know, I'd kind of go back and forth with Van Gogh and his drawings, or Albert Dürer, and see, look at the integrity of the mark. And so I was like, I wanna do that. So as an educator, when you're teaching, and you're teaching contemporary art or art history, it also informs your own work. And so that's kind of the fun thing, but yeah, yes, Sharon.
So just to, to further your point, do you see these paintings as a synthesis of all of the different languages that you've been working with for the past 20 years? Because you've had a lot of different abstract, letters, figures. I mean, I've seen some of these images, but not in person. So do you see them as a joining of those languages in a way? Because it seems as though there's a lot of abstraction, conceptual ideas, and figuration together at the same time.
I do, yeah, and I did kind of allude to that earlier, where I do feel like it is a collaboration of my past, of the styles, and I think it's not accidental. I mean, it's definitely something that I've been thinking about. So the show that I had in 2022, where I really was focused on the figures, the figuration, but I realized it wasn't like there in terms of the painting. And so this past year and a half, I had the fortune of not having to, go to a day job, and I was really able to like delve into my work. And I feel like, time is, if you have the time as an artist, it's like that's, it really helped. So this is what kind of came out of that post 2022, that show. So I do feel really good about it. Like I feel like I'm at a good place. Like I'm finally like kind of, getting it. So now it's just a matter of like working now on the figures and the meaning behind or questioning. Like I'm always questioning, like, why am I compelled to paint my daughters and my mom? And there still has to be something there in terms of my family and my history. So that's not random. But yeah, it's still like an ongoing evolution.
Can you speak about this one? I mean, maybe I missed it.
Oh no, I didn't talk about it yet. Yeah, so this one's titled Secrets. And so that's Bella and Sophia. It's definitely more abstracted. And so I had them pose in nature. So whenever they come home, I always say, okay, we're gonna do a photo shoot. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, look this way, look that way. And so it's supposed to be about sisterhood. Or not, I don't wanna say be about, it's representing sisterhood and kind of their nonchalance, their like indifference, to one another. They love each other, but their relationship is not like, hey, let's go shopping together. Hey, let's go get our nails. They're so different. And that's kind of what I want to show, that Sophia and Bella they love each other, but they are not kindred spirits. And yeah, the patterning, I think, I wanted to see a difference in scale in pattern. That's something I didn't really talk about, but yeah, so what I like to do is like have really small marks, and then I kind of build up to like medium marks, and then you have the focal point where it's usually the figure, of course, and that typically is then kind of, you see the larger spaces of the body parts, right, or the face. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of in that, like the scaling up of the mark, and also the variation of the brush stroke. So you have like dots and lines, but in different directions. So there's a gravity to the painting as well. So I want it to feel, even though it's abstraction, I still want you to feel like it's a landscape. So that there's still kind of this allusion to a horizon line somewhere. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
When do you reveal the paintings to your family, your
Yeah.
subjects, and have they ever influenced you, like in the process, like changed, like?
Oh yeah. Well, Sophia has for sure. Sophia was the last one to leave the house, and so all last year, I mean, she loves being in my shows. I mean, she's she's that kind of girl. So she's the one that said, okay, I want you to paint me in this dress. And so we did a photo shoot in my studio, and I had her, like, from different angles, I had a ton of them. But this one I had her lay it out, and I forgot there was one painting I did of her that I haven't, I mean, there are a lot of paintings I make that are just crap, and so there was one that I made of her, she's like, don't ever show that one. or she's like, why did you do this? And she's like, can you paint this one again, but using this palette? So she's very direct and directive, but there are times where I'm like, it's my painting. Go do your own painting. She's a painter herself, that's why. Like we had fun. So she's actually quite like adept at painting. So, but Bella, no. Bella's just observes.
Is there anything symbolic about the henna?
Thank you. You're asking all these questions that I've forgotten. Thank you. So I'm gonna just meander over here. Steph, you can. So for those of you who have not or didn't hear the beginning, my mom is right here, and she currently lives with us. And this is a letter that she had written to my dad, who's passed. Anyway, the art of Filipino tattooing is pretty significant in the Philippine indigenous culture. And so I wanted to kind of show that, I wanted to honor that process of tattooing on my kids. So it's and on my mom, but it's on Sophia as well. It's not to say that that it matters to me so much, but it is kind of one of these things I wanted to appropriate from my own culture. Like, there's all these debates about cultural appropriation, but I feel like, well, I am Filipino, even though I'm Filipino American, and this is a really cool pre-colonial tradition of art making that is largely unknown. And so I wanted to kind of bring it out and have people like you ask, what is that?
Yeah.
And so this is really, it's from the Igorot tribe of the north in northern Philippines. And so the tattooing is, like, the more tattoos you have, the more important you are, just to make it quite simple. The more accomplishments you've made within that tribe. So that's what that is.
Thank you.
Yep. Alex?